Welcome to the Rounding Third podcast, our very first episode. So excited to start. My name is Nick Arno, and with us we have Sean Bogue. How are you doing today, Sean?
Good, Nick. How are you doing, man? Happy to be here.
Great. And we also have Harrison Smith. How are you doing?
Good. Happy to be here. Excited to get going.
Yes, awesome. As you guys have seen on Facebook, we do have a Facebook page. We have a YouTube channel going on. So like, follow our Facebook page, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'd really appreciate it. And hope you guys enjoy the podcast. We are actually going to go live in a couple weeks where you guys can put in live chat into what we're talking about, and we can answer any questions. You can join us in the chat as we're going along. We're just going to take these first couple weeks and really, hone our craft here as we get going. Before we start, I would like to thank M&M, the SOS podcast, for having me on last night to promote this podcast that we have going on. It was a great debate between me and Morgan Sawyer. It was Willie Mays versus Babe Ruth, best of all time. It was great. It was so much fun. And we look forward to having those guys on this podcast at some point here soon. So, you guys have anything to add? You good?
No, yeah, I'm excited to get going.
Yeah,
all right.
Looking forward to it. Should be fun.
All right. So our first segment is leading off. I threw this question out to our Facebook land when we first made the page, and we want to know what's your all-time lineup. So starting with Harrison, what's your all-time lineup?
Get me going here first, huh? All right. So let's see. Here's my lineup. So I took a slightly different approach than you guys. I think my lineup might be a little bit more modern time. But when I think about these positions, I thought about players that were game changers, that would change outcomes of games, not just necessarily with a bat, but maybe with a play, maybe with their presence, things like that. So my all-time team at catcher, for me, it's always been Ivan Rodriguez. There's nobody that shut down a running game, controlled a game from behind the plate like him. Also helps that he could hit a little bit. So Ivan Rodriguez was always my catcher of choice. First base, Albert Pujols, an underrated defender, but a stellar bat, game-changing bat. Average, gap-to-gap power. You name it. You needed a single, you needed a sac fly, you needed a home run. He could do it all. Roberto Alomar, defensively a wizard. I know that Ozzy gets that nickname, but there's not as many highlight reels for most players as there are for Roberto Alomar. So he was always my favorite second baseman.
And he's arguably in the best middle infield tandem ever with Omar Vizquel.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Those two together were just gross.
Yeah, no, it was those guys at their peak they were just fun to watch. Any ground ball in the infield, you just knew it wasn't going to get through, and then it was a matter of what crazy play they might make, how many backhanded flips, how many times will they turn a double play and the ball never hit a glove. It was amazing what those guys could do. Yeah. At shortstop, although not always remembered as a shortstop, more so as a third baseman because he was so good there. But Cal Ripken Jr., guy that showed up every day, played really good defense for a long time, could hit, could run, could do it all. Just a game-changing guy. Unfortunately, didn't get to enjoy some of the success some other guys did, given where he was. But had some good runs, great player. Mike Schmidt at third base, I think that's pretty much a worldwide unanimous decision. It's hard to find a better third baseman. Again, a guy that did everything. Gold gloves, cannon for an arm, great offensive player. And then the outfield, this one was challenging. There are so many players I wanted to add that I couldn't. But when I think of the guys that change games, it's Ted Williams. Obviously, we all know Ted Williams. Willie Mays, another guy, incredible defense, base running, offense. Ken Griffey Jr., watching him patrol center field, nothing ever hit the grass. And in terms of just probably the sweetest left-handed swing you'd ever see. At DH, Edgar Martinez was always my guy. Just another guy could hit with the lights out all the time, every game. Just a lot of fun to watch. And then for my pitchers, if I need a win in a big game and I look at that all-time list, I'm going to Clemens. There may not have been a nastier big game pitcher out there. Just the guy that would not lose, would not quit. He'd even throw a bat at you if it made its way out there. Just ultimate competitor. And then when it comes to closing pitchers, this to me is an easy one. It's Mariano. There's nobody that shuts a game down in the ninth inning like him. Anytime you heard enter Sandman and saw him come out of the bullpen, every opposing fan just, put their head down and realized it was over. So
I mean,
Unless
the
you're
guy,
the Sox did do fine
You're right.
against Mariana Rivera. So, but
They-
yeah, I'm with you.
yeah, they are like the only team I think that can say they've had any sort of success against him. But I loved watching those.
Todd Walker had the the games against Mariano Rivera in the playoffs for whatever reason. Todd Walker, of all people. But yeah. Mariano's like comes in and I'm going to beat you with a cutter. You know it's coming. You know what side of the plate it's coming to, and I'm still going to beat you with it. Sorry.
Right.
Yeah, there's probably not a more dominant one pitch pitcher than him. And it was the cutter. It was hard. He was going to break your bat. He was going to make it. He was going to run it away from you, run it in on you, backdoor you. It didn't matter. You knew it was coming. You still.
And for how long he did it for too. Like this guy didn't do it for 4 or 5 years.
Right.
No, and
incredible.
No, and in the pressure cooker of New York, nonetheless.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
just really impressive.
Nice.
Yeah,
I mean,
so that's my all-time.
Yeah, you can't argue with any of those picks. I mean, that's the thing with this first question is there's no wrong answer, right? Everybody looks at baseball differently from different angles, different, defense, offense, what they brought to their team. Like there's no wrong answer to this question. So it's just it's great to see. So Sean, let's see yours.
Yeah, so let's pull it up here. So I probably not as modern as Harrison's, but a couple of modern guys in there. Yachty first behind the plate. We talked about Pudge being able to control a running game, but like Yachty's right up there with it. It's in a different way. Like he didn't have that like disgusting pop-up time and arm that Pudge had, which was just disgusting. But to this day, now I'm the youngest one on this podcast. I get it, but the 32 years I've been watching baseball, I don't think I've ever seen someone as effective with back picking guys as Yachty. Like this, so controlling a running game would not necessarily maybe, and I don't have the numbers in front of me. I probably should. I don't know what his throw up percentages on guys stealing, but I can tell you this much: you're not going to get as big a secondary lead when you're on first base against St. Louis because you don't know when it's coming.
No.
Like theoretically, you're going to think, oh, this is a terrible time for a back pick. You're going to take a big secondary lead, you're gone, done.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, and it doesn't hurt that over the past 6-7 years, Yachty's bat's woken up. Like he's no longer just a offensive liability like he used to be, in 04, 05, 06. Like this guy's a legitimate offensive threat. And to still be able to do what he does defensively, but add that offensive is kind of what had me pick Yachty there. Lou Gehrig at first. I don't know. I mean, it's Lou Gehrig at first. I don't know how else. I think, Nick, you had Lou too in yours.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Good choice.
It's a tough, Pujols is there, but
there's so
Lou Gehrig
many.
is as good as it gets.
I know.
Yeah.
Right,
there is so many on that. At first base, there was a ton. That was a tough position for me to pick. As what actually was second base, not because I think there's so many, but like second base had like 4, 5, 6 guys maybe that you could really make a case for. And Rod Carew I had a hard time with just because like not a great defensive second baseman. Like I think the fact that he was so poor precipitated his move over to first base later in his career.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But this dude was an absolute offensive weapon. And we're not talking weapons nowadays. Right. But we're not talking weapons where you're hitting 50 home runs. This dude won a batting title in 1972 without a single home run. That's insane. The guy hit like 371 and he didn't have a single homer.
Yeah. No, that's amazing.
It's insane. Ozzy Smith at short. I've always, ever since when I was little and I was playing, I remember my dad always saying, people that were big on baseball guys, always like good baseball teams have to be strong up the middle, right? So you got a good catcher, strong catcher in Yachty, Ozzy Smith at short, and if you look, probably either Trout or Griffey in center field. But either way, you're strong up the middle. That's kind of where it starts defensively.
And arguably, Ozzy Smith is in the Hall of Fame because of his defense. He's one of the 3 or 4 guys that are in the Hall just for defense, not like nothing offensively.
Right.
But,
and if they all are. All these guys are in if you make a mistake, he might make you pay for it. But you don't go into a game worrying about Ozzy Smith's bat. Like that's not what you're worried about. But he was just a wizard again, as you had in the field. Brooks Robinson at third. I went with Brooks Robinson because I know Mike Schmidt is kind of like the universal pick there. And I get that. I just thought, I think you could make a case for Brooks Robinson, just the fact the guy hit 1,000 Gold Gloves.
Most all time.
He hit what, 280 for a career, 277, somewhere around there. So it's, not terrible, but it's not great. Like,
right.
No, it's not. You play 23 years though. There's a reason why you play in the bigs for 23 years. Like, you can certainly hold your own on offense and then just excel defensively.
His highlight reel. His highlight reel defensively is ridiculous. If you ever get a chance to watch some of his highlights, the plays he make are just insane. I mean, for a third baseman.
The crazy thing. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm good. Go ahead.
I was gonna say the crazy thing about it is the guy played in an era when like not all of his plays were videoed. Like I bet you could probably. I bet you a lot of his best plays are not even on tape. Like you had to be there to see it, and then that's it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Imagine a guy like that playing nowadays in the social media era. Although you couldn't put shit on Twitter, but all the social like the era, like every play is captured.
Yeah,
that highlight would probably be triple the length that it is.
Right.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So Ted Williams, Mike Trout, Griffey. I mean, it's again like Harrison said that there's so many guys in the outfield position that you could pick. I mean, my fourth guy was Yaz. Like, how do you leave Yaz off the list? But like, I don't know. Like, it's hard. Those guys are all.
You got Mays, Hank Aaron, all the you could pick 20 outfielders and they're all right.
Roberto Clemente. Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. DH Ortiz. I mean, I grew up in Boston. I still live in Boston, but how do I not pick David Ortiz? So that's kind of that. Jacob deGrom, I know I was probably a bit of a not out of left field pick. But we talk, I know you and I have talked off of the podcast, but how dominant like 99 Pedro was. Like, that's kind of the litmus test for when pitchers are having years. Like, well, it's not 99 Pedro. DeGrom has had 99 Pedro seasons. The problem with him is he can't stay healthy. And I get that. I will eat that part of the argument. Like, the guy just can't stay healthy. But when he's healthy, like, it's disgusting what he does.
Who has a 93 mile an hour slider? No one.
But
Jacob deGrom.
He won't break it out till like the fifth inning.
Yeah.
He's hitting like 101, 102 on the gun, right? And he's blowing you away with the fastball, and then he's got that changeup, and then it's like, okay, I think we figured got the timing down, and then he hits you with a 94 slider. It's like, all right, sweet. I mean, I don't know, like, how do you? He toys with you.
Totally.
Right? He toys with you.
Totally.
So I went with him for that. Just I watch the guy, and when he's healthy, every 5 days is must-watch TV. Like, you have to tune in to watch him pitch every 5 days.
Yeah.
And then what else to be added about Mariano? I mean, and this isn't the one. This is the position where, like, I don't think you can defer to the backup, because who would be the back? Trevor Hoffman, maybe. I mean, there's guys out there that you could pick for second, but I couldn't make an argument that they're better than Mariana Rivera.
No.
I mean, John Rocker's up there. It's got to be up there somewhere. But
John Rocker. I mean, it's Mariano. I mean, it's just, and it probably always will be.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 652 saves. I have him too on my team. If you want to switch over, Harrison, 652 saves with Rivera with one pitch is you can't. I mean, there's nobody that can compete with that.
And it would be disingenuous to try and argue someone else, because it's not right. It's not true.
No.
Yeah, and the one thing I'll say to add to your comments about Yachty is there may not be a catcher who handles pitchers, like controls the pitcher itself himself and calling a game better than Yachty. That was always the one knock on Pudge. He just didn't handle a pitching staff great. He had the snap throw from his knees and he could throw anybody out, but he didn't always handle a pitching staff as well as he should. And Yachty has that in spades.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think that's honestly why I think they kept bringing him back. Yep. I mean, there were points in his career where like he was such an offensive liability. Like you as a St. Louis fan, you would think like they got to go elsewhere, but he's such a valuable piece of that pitching staff.
For sure.
And his ability I'm with you 100%.
Yeah, he makes a stat better.
Yeah, and there was a run of time there where a catcher was hard to find.
Yeah,
like a good defensive one. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Pudge Rodriguez was probably the best defensive one, and then there was a long stretch where there was not good catching around the league, arguably.
Oh,
And then
100%.
Molina came up. So, yeah. All right, so my all-time team, starting with catching, Josh Gibson is my pick. Negro Leagues catcher, for those of you that don't know, they actually crown him the home run king. They think that he hit north of 800 home runs in his career. They just didn't keep the stats in the Negro Leagues. And I mean, I've seen stories about him, and they're just like, this guy would hit a ball to the moon, and just no chance. I don't know how he was defensively, obviously, before my time. But yeah, have Josh Gibson behind the plate.
Just a little before our time. Only
Just a little bit, yeah.
That's an interesting pick with that.
Yeah.
Interesting pick.
I mean, just power numbers. They said that he probably had, 100 more. They said maybe even possibly up towards 900. But, I mean, it's insane. Yeah. Lou Gehrig, what can you say? Like you said, Iron Horse, consecutive game streak, best baseball speech of all time. Sweet, simple, to the point, get me off the field, bye. I mean, great. I mean, can't say anything more about him. Rod Carew, 328 average, 3,000 hits, only 92 career home runs, like you said, Sean, right? 1,015 RBIs. I mean, just solid offensively. Mike Schmidt.
Dude, solid would be hitting like 305 for solid.
Yeah.
It's not solid. That guy
328. All right. Oh, okay. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah, he was all right.
He was okay.
Solid. He was serviceable.
He was. I mean, he played for the Twins. I mean, just.
That's
anyways.
Unbelievable.
Ernie Banks, 512 home runs, 1,600 RBIs. Mr. Cub. I mean, most home runs by a shortstop. A-Rod might have him a little bit, but again, I don't think he played enough games at shortstop to qualify. Blah 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 blah. And it's A-Rod.
And I think those big home run years at shortstop are a little questionable. So
yeah. So then we got Mike Schmidt. We've already kind of touched on him. Ted Williams again. Willie Mays, 24-time All-Star. I did the debate last night with this guy. 24-time All-Star.
Yeah,
he has more hits. He has more hits in All-Star games than most people have plate appearances in their career. Like it's silly. I had Roberto Clemente originally, and I switched it out to Hank Aaron. I mean, also 24 All-Star appearances for Hank Aaron, 305, 3,000 hits, 755 homers, 2,200, almost 2,300 RBIs, and his total bases. Do you guys have a guess of how many total bases he had?
I don't want to sound like an idiot, so no, I'm not going to guess.
Couldn't even.
6,856 total bases.
That would not have been my guess.
No.
It's just insane though. Like that's a crazy number.
And a surprisingly underrated defender.
Yeah. That's why I almost went with Clemente. Clemente, they said, had a rocket arm. Like Bill Mazeroski at second base said every time the ball was hit to right field, he didn't want to go out there because he could hear the ball coming in, just sizzling. And he's like, no, thanks. I'm not going to catch that one.
Oh, yeah. He was one of those few guys like Vlad Guerrero. You'd go to batting practice just to see the guy throw it in.
Yeah, it's crazy. Ortiz, we touched on him. And then Nolan Ryan, he's got two records that are never going to be touched.
Yeah, no.
7 no-hitters, 5,714 strikeouts. No one is even going to come close to that. I had it somewhere. He pitched from like 68 till 92 or something like that. I mean, come on. Like, ridiculous.
I'm convinced he could probably go out there right now and win 10 games for some team out there.
For sure.
I don't think there's any doubt.
And then, obviously, the no-doubter, Rivera there. We did have some submissions from my Facebook post from the page, and I mean, most of the same. We did have a couple differences. A couple people picked Pedroia for second base.
For all time?
For all time. I mean, Red Sox fans, no doubt. But I mean,
Sure.
you watch that guy play day in and day out. He played the game how it's supposed to be played.
Oh,
Oh
sure.
yeah, no,
There was not a day he left the field with a clean uniform.
no, and there's nobody that got more out of what they had than him. I mean, for a little guy like that to hit with the kind of power he had, win an MVP as an undersized second baseman. I mean, it's you can't argue that one.
No.
And he stepped up in big games too. I mean, that guy had some
huge.
big postseason moments, and so he didn't wither. I mean, that's interesting choice, but
no.
We have Johnny Bench for catching. That was by Ken and Mike.
Understood.
Yep, absolutely.
Good one.
Let's see. Oh, Ichiro and Pete Rose. Let's talk about them. They were not on anybody. Well, we had one on Scott's list. He said Ichiro. Ichiro's got over 4,000 hits with Japan and MLB combined.
Right.
I mean, and obviously Pete Rose does too. I mean,
I struggle with that. So I thought Ichiro was fantastic to watch and tremendous player. I have a tough time giving him credit for the Japan stats. The game is much different over there. The pitching is different over there. It is very much a hitter's game in Japan. I struggle giving him credit for those stats, but I will say if he spent a whole career in the States, I think he's in the discussion for sure.
I mean, he still had 3,000 hits here.
For sure, absolutely.
Right.
I mean, I don't disagree with that at all. Randy Johnson was mentioned. I mean,
Randy Johnson was in my top 3.
There's no opposing.
Randy Johnson was in my top 3.
Yeah, he's 6'11", standing on top of a 30-inch mound. Like, yeah, buddy. No, I'm all set. Thanks.
Yeah. And you look at that. You look at. Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying when he was on, we talk about 99 Pedro as a litmus test, right? Like when Randy Johnson was on, that guy was equally as disgusting. If I don't want to say any better because Pedro's but I mean that guy was something. You left-handed hitters wouldn't dare step in the batter's box.
No.
I mean, you would look silly. You would look absolutely stupid. I would just take a strikeout. I'd be like, just give me a technical strikeout, whatever the hell. Like, I'm not even going to step in the box.
Yeah. Was it John Kruk in the All-Star game just swung at 3 ridiculous sliders like in the right-hander batter's box and just
I mean, that's what I do. I mean,
he was halfway back to the dugout in strike 3 when he swung it. I mean, it wasn't even close.
Yeah. So
I had my other one in the top 3 was Walter Johnson.
Good one.
Was one, and obviously he's well before our time. I remember this is years ago. I was taking a tour at like the Nationals Park down in DC, and they were on the road, so it was cool. It was like $10 at the time. You go in and do like a nice tour, and I thought for $10, I'm like, it's gonna be just walk around the concourse. But no, it was good. We got to go in both locker rooms. We were in the bullpen, and the guy that was doing the tour guide was cool. Like you could tell he was just like a baseball fan. Like he was like adding things that weren't part of the tour, but just like cool baseball stories. And I don't know how Walter Johnson came up, but Walter Johnson came up and he's telling a story. And I can't remember who the batter was, but he's like, this guy, they're saying back in the day, this guy probably threw 98, 99, 100, but it's like well before all that shit was tracked and whatever. But based off eyewitness, that's probably what he was pumping. They said, I don't know who the batter was, but 2 fastballs just right by him, like just down the middle, right by him. And he goes back, turns around and walk back to the dugout. And the umpire is like, hey, you got one more strike. There's only strike 2. He's like, I didn't see the first 2. I have no chance of seeing the third. He's like, I'm just going to go back to the dugout. I thought that was so funny. Yeah. Walter Johnson to me was this guy was, if they kept stats back in the day the way they do now, he'd be right up there with any of them, I think.
Yeah. I mean, those old-time guys like Chrissy Mathewson, Cy Young, like their job, their position was pitching. Every single day they went out and threw 200 pitches. Right. Like, what?
Yeah, insane. The one other pitcher I had on my list that is a polar opposite to Randy Johnson and most of the guys we picked is Maddox. And
yeah, absolutely.
The guy's fastball rarely broke 90, but he could hit a dime hanging off the backstop, and he would frustrate you to no end with change of speed and location, and he was just so much fun to watch, and a total change of pace from some of the dominant pitchers of that era.
And he was the one that took the strike zone like this and turned it.
Yep.
He is the person that turned the strike zone. Like, that's why you don't see any more. I mean, unless you're, Laz Diaz, you don't see any more high strikes anymore. tough subject. Anyways,
Yeah.
yeah. So anything else to add about that? I think we had a great discussion about that.
Yeah, no, I think that was good. It would be an interesting. I mean, obviously there's no way to do it, but we were earlier today leading into this. I was thinking like if there was a way to figure out like put all our three teams together, like who would win, like which team would win.
Run a simulation.
Like, I mean, right, exactly. Like
I'll put it together on the show. I'll put it together on the show and see what I can do. All right, moving on to the fifth inning showdown here. So our second question is who is the best last place team right now? Like who's in the best position to be decent in the future? Who's in the best shape? We did get a couple answers from people. They said the Marlins. The Marlins are technically not in last place. The Nationals are in the NL East by 2 games. So our last place teams are Orioles, Twins, Rangers, Nats, Pirates, and Diamondbacks. Who's in the best position going forward? Who wants it?
Go, Sean.
Okay. I mean, based off of last year, I mean, obviously it's a culmination of things, but I mean, the Twins almost won 70 games last year. So I think out of the last place teams that are in the last place currently, I mean, the Twins were the best one in 2021. They won 67 or 68 games. It's just under 70 games, which obviously is not great, but for last place teams. We'll have to go back and take a look and see if we can confirm kind of who they're going to lose, because obviously that's going to matter.
Well, they already kind of dumped, right? They already dumped. They dumped Nelson Cruz. They're looking to move Josh Donaldson. I just had another one. They dumped somebody else too.
Right, but
Rosario.
Yeah, Donaldson was the one that Nelson Cruz, but I mean, obviously Nelson Cruz was traded. I'm thinking more like you still have Byron Buxton.
Right.
Yeah. With a questionable contract though, and some questions about whether or not he's going to resign.
When's he up though? Is he? He's not up after this year.
No, he's got 1 or 2 more years of team control, I believe.
Okay, right, and that's what. So we're talking. I mean, you're still building it kind of around Byron, but I think the pitching staff needs a lot of work.
Oh yeah.
Like, I was looking quickly at what the pitching like. That's a tough pitching staff. Like they're going to need to get some work on the pitching staff. But that Astudillo kid can hit. They got Andrelton Simmons at shortstop. I don't know what his contract looks like, but that guy's not much of an offer. But defensively, I mean, he's still got some talent there.
Yeah.
But I'd say flip it upside it. I don't think they're the best team, but a team that I think has some decent pitching but needs some work is Baltimore. I mean, you anchor it with John Means.
You're stealing my thunder right now.
So okay, sorry, go ahead. I'll go with Minnesota. I'll take Minnesota as that team.
It's all good.
I do think they definitely need some work on in the pitching staff, get some legitimate starters in there, something that keep guys in games, right? Like I remember the Sox were a better team than Minnesota, don't get me wrong, but watching those Red Sox Minnesota, they did 4 runs in the first, 4 or 5 runs in the first couple. Like the game's over before it even starts. Like they got to get some legitimate starting pitching in there, but I do think they have some talent on the roster. So we'll see kind of what they do in the offseason, what the moves they make, but I think that's a team to look out for the next couple of years, at least to be competitive.
I mean, especially in the Central, you have the White Sox probably. I mean, the rest of the division's pretty weak. So
Agreed.
yeah, I agree with that.
Well, and they were a legitimate division contender for the last several years. I mean, winning the division. So it's not like this is a team that's been bad for a while. They had the roster got shaken up and they had a tough season.
Right.
Yeah. Harrison?
So I went a slightly different route. I went with the Rangers. There's a lot of things about Texas I like. So I like, they do have a nice young core. I do think this Garcia kid, who's potentially Rookie of the Year candidate, is legit. And when you look across those last place teams, they have 5 top 100 prospects that are projected to land in the next year or two. On the major league roster, they've got a pretty deep farm system. I think dumping guys like Gallo, freeing up the money, and also getting some draft capital were big for them and prospects. But this is a team that's got $28 million committed for next year. They're going into free agency with a big fat checkbook, and they want to spend. Texas is a great place to recruit players to in terms of a place they want to be in that Arlington area. It's a great area to be. No state income tax. Nice climate. I think it'll be an easy place to attract, a name in that wants to be part of a rebuild. But lots of draft capital, lots of money, a commitment to win. And this is a team that's only lost 100 games 3 times in 50 years. So this is not something they're going to do. This was a big reset season for them, and they've got money, prospects, and draft capital. So I think in terms of the future, I think they've probably have the brightest future right now of those teams in the bottom. Maybe not the most immediate, but I do think in the next couple of years, that's a team that's going to climb up those standings and make some noise.
Yeah. My pick is kind of what Sean was going towards. The only thing is the division. I mean, they can't compete in the AL East, but the Orioles really aren't that bad. They shouldn't be. They're just in a really tough division. They have John Means at the front, like you said. You got Trey Mancini, Santander, Mullins, Ryan Mountcastle, Austin Hayes. You get a couple starters and some bullpen help, in this offseason, and you might be in all right shape. I mean, they're still the Orioles.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's
Well,
what
the
it
hard
is.
part,
But
like you had said, the hard part with them is they got to play the Sox, the Yankees, and the Rays 17 times a year each. Like,
and now you get the Blue Jays.
Well, the Blue Jays have to prove it to me. I mean, every year we go into the season. This is the year of the Blue Jays. They're young, they're talented, they're this, they're that, and they are.
Yep.
But it's like they win 75 games. Like,
you're right.
I need them to not buy their way into the postseason like they did that 1 year 4 or 5 years ago. But prove it to me with your young, talented core day in and day out. But I'm with you on that. I mean, it's just a tough division for Baltimore. Texas, to me, I'm with you on Texas with the young prospects and stuff they have. I don't know. And this could just be my incorrect point of view, but I just when was the last time Texas has consistently sent young, good kids to the pros? I don't know if they struggle to develop talent. I don't know if they struggle to identify the right kind of talent. I don't know what it is, but they finish in the bottom half of their division year in and year out, and they get these young kids in the draft, and then it's just they just fizzle out or they get traded somewhere else early. I don't know. Elvis Andrews was supposed to be the next great thing at shortstop. He had 1 or 2 good years in Texas, and now he's bouncing around. Joey Gallo was, but the guy was never more than just a home run hitter.
Right.
I just don't know. And this could be the time I'm wrong. I look at them and I'm just I don't know.
Underwhelmed.
No. Yeah. And the funny thing is, I look at it as there's very few teams except maybe the Rays that are really good at developing talent in their system that comes all the way through, that consistently does it. But for the Rangers, it's kind of a strength in numbers thing here. You've got 5 top 100 prospects that are all going to land about the same time. You're bound to have a couple of them work out. But more importantly, the way you rebuild that team is you whip out the checkbook and you bring in a couple of anchor players that you then bring young kids around in. To me, it's almost more the salary and payroll flexibility they've got going into the offseason, with some young guys who may not have to come in and feel the pressure of being the guy. Because I think that's where Texas has gone wrong in the past. They brought guys in like Andrus, and basically, you are the guy. And for a young kid, that's a lot to be developing at that level with that level of pressure on him. I think that Texas has a chance to do it right.
Yeah, if you build it just exactly what you said, right? When they were successful, who did they get? They got Adrian Beltre. Right. They had those 2 hardy veterans, and then they had the young kids around them, and they were somewhat successful during that time. Yep. So I agree with that 100%. So, yeah. All right, we're moving on. 7th inning stretch here. Next segment. So who has had the hottest postseason so far? Sorry. Chris Taylor, Kike Hernandez, Yordan Alvarez, or Eddie Rosario. So from the 4 teams left, 1 from each team. Cool. Here are the quick stats right here. Chris Taylor for the Dodgers, 351 average, 13 hits, 4 doubles, 4 homers, 12 RBIs. I mean, ridiculous. Kike Hernandez, we all know how hot he was. 408, 20 hits, 4 doubles, 1 triple, 5 home runs, only 9 RBIs. Not necessarily his fault.
No.
We'll get to that. Yordan Alvarez, 441, 15 hits, 4 doubles, 1 triple, 2 homers, 9 RBIs. And then Eddie Rosario, 474, 18 hits, 1 double, 1 triple, 3 home runs, 11 RBIs. So those are the quick stats on those guys. Who is your pick? Who was the MVP out of those four?
That's a tough choice. I made Sean go last time, so I'll go this time. I go to Rosario, and I do it because that was a team that was never supposed to beat the Dodgers. First of all, they were supposed to get manhandled. They don't have Acuna, so there's of course questions about if they've got the offense to carry it. And what he's done for that offense was provide that spark they so desperately needed to make sure that they were getting into games early, not waiting too late. I think they took advantage of some stuff the Dodgers did, which we'll get into later, which was somewhat silly and maybe not NLCS worthy. But I do think that team, they needed to have that guy. Freddie Freeman was scuffling like crazy. Felt he was feeling the pressure. Rosario kind of stepped up. And then what you saw as that series went on is that as Rosario was kind of coming up with these big hits, you could almost see that offense relax. And that's when guys like Freeman started hitting and everything came together. So I go with Rosario. Yeah, right. Yeah. Right. I go with Rosario because he really was, his stats may not be the ones that jump off the page out of those four, but the hits that he's had and the timing of them, I think are the reason the Braves are where they are.
Huge. 100% agree. Sean, out of those four?
Yeah, I mean, that's tough to go against or argue. To me, it's I think Alvarez. And the reason why I say Alvarez is what, it's only been the 2 home runs, 2 or 3 extra base hits, 9 RBIs. And again, the RBIs are not totally on you. Like, no, if guys aren't in scoring position, it's tough for you to get them in. So I'll give you that. But even when the Red Sox were, quote unquote, containing Alvarez, he wasn't making it easy at bats. I mean, he's making it tough at bats. Like, it might be a foul out, but I mean, a fly out, but it's a 7-pitch at bat. It's stressful pitches for these pitchers. Like, this guy's so locked in. We saw it in Sale. I know we're going to get to that in a minute, but we saw it in that game against Sale where, like, the big thing about him too, though, is something that I've noticed throughout that whole Red Sox series. I don't know if he's always been this way or if it's just him being locked in that Red Sox series. This dude is an ambush hitter. Like, he is not going to let you get an easy 0-1 pitch. Like, it's just not, and the Red Sox are very much that way, which can be frustrating as a Red Sox fan to watch them just let 95 down the middle go by time after time. But this Alvarez kid does not let that happen. Like, we saw it in the Chris Sale game specifically. Like, he's going to be aggressive at all times. And as a pitcher, that's got to put you on your heels, right? Like, that has to be. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, physically, he's a monster. He's like Frank Thomas-esque in the box. Mm-hmm. Like, he's just scary.
He's not afraid to take pitches the other way. Like, to me, Eddie Rosario had, that had a really good series. Eddie Rosario, I think, is probably the guy based on the numbers and the big hits that he's had. I mean, it's probably that guy. In Kike, it's the opposite. I think Kike had a ton of hits and some big hits, but there were many opportunities for Kike to get up there with guys on base in the middle to late innings, and it didn't happen for him, right? Like, so it's for me, Kike, it wasn't the hits that he had, it was the hits that he didn't have, and that's to me why Alvarez is the guy for me, because it's the hits that he did have at the times that he had them were just backbreakers.
Well, and Kike had the hits, the backbreaking hits to the Rays, not not the Astros. That's where Kike did his damage. We weren't even supposed to get past the Rays. I say we. I mean the Red Sox. The Red Sox weren't even supposed to get past the Rays, for crying out loud. So, I mean, as hot as you can get. You're right. The Astros series, he cooled off in a hurry. I mean, he was hitting over 500 for 500, 4 games, and then just kind of lost it. I mean, still he had 20 hits.
It's baseball. I mean, that happens. Right. I mean, and that's fine. But to me, it's just the way. And Alvarez is, what was the number? 441, something like that for his batting average.
441. Yep.
441. I mean, out of the 14 hits, how many hits did he have? 15 hits.
7 or extra bases.
7 or extra bases. And I know we're talking about the culmination of 2 series, but I'm mainly focusing on him versus the Red Sox. Like, I can think of 4 or 5 hits off the top of my head now where I'm just scratching my head being like, A, you can't pitch to him, and B, tip your cap. That's a great pitch, great hit. Like, what are you going to do?
Right.
Right.
All right. So
the guy just locked in.
Right.
Well,
so
that's what made Alvarez so dangerous. He was my first pick until I really thought about the Rosario piece of it in the Braves, because Alvarez did the same thing for the Astros. That team was on the ropes. The Red Sox have been hitting grand slams like they were base hits, and they lost 2 games big. They were on the ropes, and then he just kind of came alive and basically dragged that team, kind of off the ropes back into the middle of the ring, started throwing punches again, and there they are. They rip off 3 in a row and go to the series. But he was absolutely he was the right hitter at the right time to salvage that series for that team, because they were in trouble.
So that's a great transition into our next topic. Alex Cora, with first base open, decides to have Sale pitch to Alvarez. First base is open, and he's 2 for 2 off Sale with great swings. The guy's never off balance.
No.
Was that the right call? Are you that trusted in Sale coming off Tommy John in the playoffs, the way he's been up and down? Do you think that was the right call?
No.
I mean, hindsight says no. And who was it? Correa was up behind him, right?
Yes.
I'm 99% sure they had Correa up behind him. So I don't necessarily I'm not 100% like you can't pitch to him. Like, you can't, because he is I do have a little, and I know he's coming off Tommy John, but he's still Chris Sale. Like, he still has that kind of grit about him that I will always kind of trust in. I just don't know if I didn't like the pitches that they threw him. Like I had said earlier, this guy's an ambush hitter right now. His mentality is if he sees a strike, he's swinging for it. The first at bat was a fastball, first pitch fastball, 3 inches off the outside of the plate. Guy took it over the monster. The second at bat was a high fastball that he fouls off. Second pitch slider that he takes off the monster for a double. So it's he's 2 for 2, going the other way both times, swinging at the first pitch both times. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can't throw him anything close to the zone in that first pitch. It has to be a slider very well away or way in the dirt for him to chase, maybe get him off balance by going 0-1, or maybe try and chase a high fastball. I just didn't like the pitch sequence that they threw him.
The approach,
obviously, hindsight says I didn't like that they threw it to him at all. But I'm not going to lie and say, at the time, I was okay with them pitching to him. I just didn't like the pitches.
So we've talked about this before with Chris Sale. He's such a dominant pitcher that he can throw his stuff right down the middle and get swings and misses on it. That Sale right now, maybe not quite. He's not quite there yet. But we said he had to expand the zone. And I don't think Sale expanded it enough, like you said, to make them chase. So they're just sitting on those strikes and just on them.
No.
Yeah, and I think with Correa up next, I think that makes it a little bit more tricky too, because while he had been, I wouldn't necessarily say skidding, but he wasn't the hottest hitter on the planet. I think you might have been able to, if you pitch your way around Alvarez, you put him on first base, there was 1 out, you might be able to get him a little bit extra jumping at the plate, maybe swinging a bad pitch, double play, something like that. I'm just not entirely sure Alvarez is the guy that you want to be facing. I do think I'd rather take Correa at that time. But that's hindsight, obviously.
Yep. I agree. I don't think you can pitch to him the way you did there. I don't disagree with Sean though. I don't think it's not so much pitching to him, it's how you pitch to him. So, and that's it. I'm not going to throw 4 fingers down and give the guy an intentional walk. But I would have pitched him in a way where I'm going to throw a lot of stuff that he just can't reach, that he shouldn't be able to hit, and see if you can get him to maybe chase and give you a gift. But at the same time, we were going back and forth after the 2 big Red Sox games saying, the Astros aren't making any adjustments as a pitching staff. They're not busting these guys in, they weren't buzzing the tower, right, Sean? They weren't doing anything to make the Red Sox uncomfortable. And then what you saw as the Astros started to pick up some momentum, the Red Sox did the same thing. They weren't 100%. Making the hitters uncomfortable. Sale should have been busting him on the hands, right around the waist, making him think about it, maybe coming in, belt to letters and having something come in at him, not hit him, but at least get him to back up off the plate and give you some respect. But instead, they were throwing sliders on the outside part of the plate, fastballs on the outside part of the plate, letting these guys get their arms extended. They were comfortable.
That was going to be my next point. Absolutely.
Yeah, and Evaldi did a good job early in the series of really making these guys kind of respect the plate, coming in on him and making sure that they realized he wasn't afraid to come after him. But then they stopped doing that. And the Astros got comfortable, especially Alvarez, and they just kept letting him extend his arm. So if I would have pitched to him, but I would have been extremely careful. I would have buzzed him in a couple of times, maybe a big slider well off the plate, something in the dirt, trying to get him to maybe give you a gift and swing at a bad pitch. But I would not have thrown him anything over the plate like they did.
And for the record, I would have been okay with a 4 or 5 pitch walk.
Absolutely.
Like that wouldn't have been the end of the world for me.
Nope.
Right.
Because I'm with you. My next leading is what I said. Like he's 2 for 2 with 2 pitches going. He's looking to go the other way. Like he's looking out over the plate. Like that's what he's looking for. So to throw a slider or a fastball 2-3 inches off the plate, might as well be down the middle for him. That's what he's looking for. Like you got to get him off the plate a little bit.
Right.
So yeah,
which they did pitch him inside a couple times, but it's so far out of the zone that it doesn't do anything. Right?
Yeah, it's not effective.
Right, exactly. It's a waste pitch.
Well, and his approach was so good with Sale. He wasn't trying to pull anything. He was going to go back up the middle, left center, and that was great. He was just going to let it ride. He wasn't trying to go up there and do anything crazy.
And I know I was texting you guys on the side during that game. That's what we should have been doing against this Framber. Was it Garcia or who was that?
Framber Valdez.
Valdez. I mean, in Harrison, I think you had said it. This dude was just a lefty, Derek Lowe, but it just was 96 instead of 93.
Right.
But I mean, the big at bat to me was bottom of the 5th, 2 on, no out, and Renfroe at the plate. And Renfroe's been skating like crazy at that point. He gets a 2-0 2-seamer, and he's trying to lift off. It's like, just think the other way. You got to think up the middle and the other way. I mean, they were pulling off every single fastball. It's like, you guys can't all hit home runs. And that's the problem is what? And Fox loved to flash the goddamn graphic. 22 out of 27 runs via home run or whatever it was. But that you live by the home run, die by the home run. Like, no one was willing to just step up there, small ball, go the other way. Like, this guy was in such a groove. If you got back-to-back hits, it would have rattled him. It would have had to have rattled him. The guy was perfect through 4. He was in such a groove. You just got to get a couple of hits. It's easier said than done. I get it, but you got to change the approach. Like, they just never adjusted their approach at the plate.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when the runs come that easy, and games 2 and games 3. You're like, all right, we're just gonna sit back and launch these next 2 games. And like you said, it's feast or famine. And it was like worse than famine. Like, it was tough to watch.
It was tough.
Oh, that was
frustrating.
That was the approach it did the Yankees in. Same approach it did the Red Sox in. Eventually, they got out of the base hit, the double, the line drive, and the gap, and they started to try to lift off and launch to try to get everything back in one swing. And you just in the playoffs, you're facing pitching that's too good to think you're just going to go up there and tee off.
And managers that do things differently, by the way. Like, you get into the postseason, and as I'm sure we're about to talk about next with Cora, you do things differently in the postseason. You're managing bullpens differently. Guys are getting shorter hooks, pitchers. So it's different. Like, you're not going to have really those games where you can do that. Like, you have to be able to manufacture runs, especially in close games. And that's what was killing me with the Red Sox. It's a 1-0, 2-0 game. Like, this is a close baseball game. We're in this thing.
Yeah.
So
yeah, another great segue by Sean here. Did Dave Roberts rely on his bullpen too much this last series against the Braves? I mean, he started Knebel, he started Joe Kelly. I mean, you have Scherzer, you have Urias, who has been a postseason nightmare for teams. I mean, how do you guys feel about what Roberts did?
I'm actually astonished we're having this conversation because, like, 3 months ago, the Dodgers were like an embarrassment of riches when it came to starting pitching. They had a healthy Kershaw, they had Bauer, they had this Urias kid developing. You had everybody. You had everybody you had 7 starting pitchers at one point. You had David Price and Walker Buehler. You had 7 starting pitchers at one point. And then
they got Max Scherzer.
Yeah, right. And then by the way, you just traded for Max Scherzer, which but yes, I get it. You lost Bauer and Kershaw is a shadow of his old self, but you had these talented starters, and I hate the bullpen starter thing, and I know why they do it, to try to get matchups in and mess up your lineup card and get a couple of innings under their belt with whatever matchups they want and trying to get you off to a slow start. But I hate that when you've got starting pitchers in the pen. And I was reading somewhere that Scherzer was having some arm discomfort
Dead
because
arm
of the
stuff. Yeah.
because of the ninth inning stuff he was doing. Because again, you were rolling him out in the ninth inning because you couldn't trust Jansen to close a game, and it just I feel like he tinkered with that pitching staff so much and created these bizarre matchups, and ultimately, they completely ran out of gas, and those pitchers were done. They everything was flat. You didn't have anybody except for I think Bueller in the NLCS that really looked great. And I honestly think Dave Roberts I think he overplayed his hand and created a lot of those problems.
Yeah, the thing is when you roll out your bullpen arms like that, these are professional hitters, right? They have charts upon charts and iPad videos and all this stuff on all these guys, but nothing is better than seeing them live and in person. And when you've seen them 5-6 times in a series, you're gonna get to them. It's the law of averages, right? You know their patterns, you know their stuff, you know how it's gonna break. Like they're gonna catch up to it. So whether it's the first inning when he brings them in, or it's late in the game, like the guys have seen it 4 or 5 times already. You know, I mean, Blake Trinan is disgusting, but they've seen him 5 times, and Austin Riley.
To your point, what makes Blake Trinan so nasty is you might see him once as a hitter, once a series. He's pitched. Let's say he comes in to close 2 out of 3 games of a series, right? But as a hitter, you may not have seen him the first 2 times. So you're getting up there with 2 outs in the ninth. You're seeing this guy for the first time after he's mowed down your entire lineup. Like, I'm with you on that. Like, it's you see him for the 4th or 5th time, it's a whole lot easier.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, and to go back to our all-time teams, you look at a guy like Mariana Rivera. When he struggled because they were asking him to get the 4 and 5 out save.
Right.
These guys are not runners; they're sprinters. They want to come in, throw 12 pitches at max effort, and get out of there. When you have these guys come in and throw at high velocity that are high leverage guys, they're not meant to be out there for 4, 5, 6 outs. It's just not what they're built for. It's not how they approach their outing. It's not built for the stuff they throw. And when you try to get these guys stretched out, or you bring them into these situations that are not high leverage, it's a big difference. It's like, you mentioned John Rocker earlier. That guy could not get excited for an 8th inning visit. When you brought him out in the 8th inning, he did not get jacked up and sprint out of the bullpen with the same level of energy because it wasn't his thing. He wanted to come in when in these super high leverage, stressful situations, because that's when he thrived. These guys are all the same. It's their approach is not built for what Dave Roberts was asking them to do.
Yeah. Rocker only sprinted from the bullpen because he was afraid to get hit in the head with batteries.
Well, that too,
I mean, that's the only reason that guy sprinted from the bullpen.
And I'm sure we could probably sit here and do another hour, on analytics alone, right? It's like, not to be like the guy that either loves or hates analytics. Like, I get that it's made its way into the game and it's here to stay. Like, it's not going anywhere anytime soon. But like, analytics will tell you that 3 outs in the second are the same as 3 outs in the 8th of the ninth, and it's not true.
Right.
Like, it's just not. I mean, it's the same. It's the same because it's 3 outs, but it's not the same. Like, as you alluded to, Harry, like the energy, the high leverage stress situations, like these guys create their own mentality to deal with that. And, now you're telling this guy he's got to come out and get 3 outs. But like, well, it's the second inning, so what difference does it make? Well, it makes a difference. Like, it makes a huge difference. And not only that, but, hitters, it matters. Hitters approach a second inning at bat different than they approach a 7th or an 8th inning at bat. Yep. Right? So you got a hitter that's in a comfort zone in the second inning versus a pitcher that's not in a comfort inning zone. Like, who's going to win that battle? Like, I that's where I just think it's creeping a little bit too much into the game. The whole analytics thing. I mean, let starters do what they do. Like, and I'd be one thing if it was, if you didn't have anyone to start it, but you had Urias there. And like you had said, Nick, I mean, this guy he was throwing well. Like, he had looked good earlier in the postseason.
He's a 20-game winner. He's a 20-game winner.
Yeah.
To me, that was the no-brainer starter.
So the reason he didn't start Urias is, well, my thing is, I think I texted you guys about it, was he was trying to have the Braves start their left-handed hitters, right? Yep. So he starts with a righty, and then when he brings in the lefty, he brings in Urias. He pinch hits for all his lefties and gets the right-handers in there because the back end of his bullpen was all righties, Trinan, Knebel, Jansen. So now it's righty on righty, and Roberts wins that matchup. supposedly. I think that was his frame of thinking.
Yeah.
But I don't agree with it. You roll with what you've been doing all year. I hate
I
this
just
whole
don't get it.
bullpen
Like,
thing in the playoffs.
my whole thing is like, you would alluded to the fact that Urias won 20 games this year.
Right.
Did he
And
win
that's what I
20
mean.
games because he was fucking with the other team's lineup card? Or did he win 20 games because he's a really good pitcher and he knows how to attack lefties and righties and he knows how to get out of jam? Like, that's why he won 20 games.
Right.
And you think that the Braves didn't see right through that and plot and plan their lineup accordingly? I mean, they knew that they weren't going to see more this. They weren't going to see this guy for more than a couple of innings. They're not going to base 9 innings of a lineup on a 2-inning bullpen starter. I mean, it's the silliest thing to think that you're going to outsmart a major league manager with all the information they've got and experience they've got. It's stupid. It's not going to happen.
Dave Roberts only wins that if you get yourself to the 7th, 8th, and 9th with a 1, 2, or 3 run lead. If you can't get to the back end of the bullpen with a lead, what's the point of setting things up and outsmarting the other guy? Like, you've got to get there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Like, $1 in my hand now is better than $1 in my hand tomorrow. Like, I'd rather have the lead. Give me the guy that I know is ready for the situation, the guy that's trained for it, the guy that is built for it, the guy that won 20 games. I don't know.
No.
I don't get it.
No, it's a 7-game series, which feels really long, but it's really short. And if you keep planning for tomorrow and you don't win today, then tomorrow's never going to come. So what does it matter?
Right.
Yeah. 100%. I agree. All right. So we are moving on to our rounding third segment here. So we got Braves and Astros. Cheaters versus the team that wasn't supposed to win. So Astros, Braves, World Series predictions. I'll go first. I haven't gone first yet. I love the Braves. I'm rooting for them. They're without Acuna. Hurts a lot. Big bat in the middle of that lineup they're missing. I think their bullpen is overachieving.
Mm-hmm.
They've been hot. I get it. Players get hot in the postseason, but you look at the Braves pitching last year, it wasn't very good. And that's the reason they lost the 3-1 series lead to the Dodgers last year. I just don't think that the Braves quite have enough pitching to get them by this Houston lineup that's ridiculous. I think the Braves will get 2 games off the Astros just because the Astros don't have any starting pitching either. Lance McCullers was just ruled out for the World Series, so he's not coming back. I don't think we're going to see other outings out of Garcia and Valdez like we did against the Red Sox. I just don't see it. You might have one good start out of them, out of the 3 or 4 games they pitch. But I think the Braves steal 2 games, but I think the Astros ultimately win in 6.
Fair.
Yeah. No, fair. I think Astros in 7. I have a similar thinking to you, Nick. I just think the Astros lineup, like, the only inkling reason why Red Sox fans had a shot that we could win this was they had done for a couple of games a nice job of keeping that Houston lineup kind of off balance. But Alvarez was Alvarez. I mean, I expect him to be the same. Correa's starting to hit the ball well. Altuve's starting to get on base. Altuve hit a couple of big home runs. I mean, you got the top of that lineup is deep, but when those top guys start getting on base and driving balls into the gap, it's hard to keep up with them. It's really difficult.
Kyle Tucker's no slouch.
That's right. Kyle Tucker,
and he's in the seat of the 7 hole, 7 or 8 hole.
That's right.
I mean,
yeah, 100%. I mean, the lineup is really good. I only say 7 because I really, really want the Braves to be there in the end. If I had to put a ton of money down, probably Houston in 5. But I'm going to officially say Houston in 7.
All right.
Fair. So I agree with everything you guys said, but I am going to go a different route. I'm going to take the Braves in 7.
Let's go.
First of all, I just can't pick Houston. I just can't. I can't do it. But secondly, I think the difference between the Braves and the Red Sox, pretty similar roster makeup. I think the approaches are relatively similar. I think the Braves, you're 100% right. Their pitching is outperformed. Yeah, but they just came off the Dodger series, which that lineup had some serious thump in it. And they managed it pretty well. I think the difference in the makeup between the Red Sox and the Braves is the Braves are grinders. That is a team that is going to wear you out with singles and doubles. They're going to take their walks. They're not going to try to launch. They're not a flashy team. They're grinders. And I think that because of that, I think they will just be able to outlast Houston in what's probably going to be I wouldn't say a slugfest, but it's going to be one of those kind of matches where it just goes back and forth. But I do think the Braves have the ability to outlast Houston, and I'm going to take them in 7.
With Freddie Freeman there, I mean, he's got to be the best leader possibly in the National League. I mean, the guy leads by example on and off the field. You never hear a bad thing about that guy, and the Braves have taken on that persona, and the fans there are incredible too. Like, yeah, I mean, I'm rooting for him 100%, but
I might be one of the few people that feels like Atlanta's a better team without Acuna. And I say that because I think Acuna is one of those guys who is just a massive distraction. He's a showboat. He's been benched multiple times for loafing around the field. And I know a guy like Freddie Freeman's probably had a great impact on getting him on the straight and narrow. But I look at the Astros and Correa checking his watch because it's his time, although he hasn't done jack. And, Freddie Freeman doesn't let that stuff happen in that locker room. And I feel like when Acuna's not there, I actually feel like this is a better team, not necessarily skill-based, but I feel like it's a better team because they don't have that distraction. They can focus, they can grind. They're not dealing with all the noise he creates. I feel like this team is better prepared for the playoffs without Acuna in the lineup.
Well, look at the pieces they put together because he got hurt, right? They got Rosario because he hurt. Jock Peterson comes in and hits 3 bombs in the divisional series and carries them. They don't have Jock Peterson and Eddie Rosario if Acuna's in the lineup. And arguably, Peterson's the reason they got to the CS and the LCS, and Rosario's the reason they're in the World Series.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see it. I can definitely see where you're coming from. I mean, 100%.
I'll just say to finish it off, Harrison, you talk about the Braves being a grinded out, take your walks, take your singles, don't try to launch. That's kind of what the Sox were all year. Like, they hit their home runs, don't get me wrong.
Yep.
But they were a lineup that you didn't want to face because it was like, oh, goddamn, like Vasquez and 9-pitch at bat. Like, that's who they were. And then they had those 2 games, back-to-back games where they were just hitting all, and now it's just like, oh, well, we're home run hitters now. And it's like, you're not. Like, you guys are built.
Nope.
That's what Heim built this team, and Alex Cora managed this team for you guys to be just those nasty, annoying, paper-cut teams that just 100 hits in a series. Like, that's what you were built for. And I'm with you. I do think the Braves are like that, and they do make it more fun to watch. Like, I'm rooting for them for multiple reasons. That's one. Like, they are a very enjoyable baseball team to watch.
Yes, love it.
Because they do that.
Yeah, 100%.
Agreed.
All right, now our next segment, last segment, we're heading home. So we are getting a little jump start on the hot stove. Buster Olney reported that Corey Seager or Carlos Correa is heading to the Yankees. Is it going to happen? Who's the better fit? Or will it even happen, like I said? Who wants to take it?
I mean, they'll make a splash. I mean, the Yankees will do it. I mean, they spent $300 million on Garrett Cole. Yankee fans were literally just like, thought they were going to win 150 games. And, but their big thing is, you spend the money on this guy. They want to spend money. The team wants to spend money. The fans want to spend money. The front office wants to spend money. Don't think otherwise, because it's what they want to do. It's what they've always wanted to do. So I think they will make a splash. If it's one of those 2 guys, I'm not sure. Out of those 2 guys, if I'm a Yankee fan, Correa is such a an attractive piece. I don't know if I might want Seager, though. Like, I might
Seager with that right field porch all day, man. I might look at
the body of work. I might look at the body. I might look at Seager and say Seager might be a better fit in New York.
Seager and LeMahieu up the middle will be no joke either. I mean, 2 top of the line bats. Like I said, short right field porch for Seager. I think he's the better fit. Baseball-wise, attitude-wise, I see Correa fitting better.
Attitude-wise, I definitely see Correa fitting.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You think baseball-wise too?
Baseball-wise, Seager for sure.
Oh, I got
He
you.
makes the most sense baseball-wise. Correa, attitude-wise, he's a Yankee.
Yeah.
I mean, let's call it
Oh,
how
he
it is.
looks like he belongs in pinstripes. Like he looks like he belongs in the Yankee uniform.
I hate it. No one looks good in Yankee pinstripes.
I didn't say look good. I say look like he belonged.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyways.
I totally agree. The Yankees are going to go out and do some stuff. They can't have another season like this where they just make the wild card and get booted. But when I look at that lineup, you can sign Correa and Seager. It doesn't fix your problems. That lineup is a black hole of strikeout machines and home run guys. You got Stanton, Judge, Rizzo, you got Gallo, you got Sanchez, you got all these guys that are gonna hit, sub 260 and strike out a gazillion times, leave all kinds of runners on base.
Yeah.
And they've gotten away. When you look at those Yankees teams that won all those World Series in the 90s, those teams were not that scary, but up and down the lineup, you had guys that could hurt you. Now they got all these monsters that hit home runs, but they don't have the on base and they don't have the clutch hitting. They don't have that consistency in the lineup. It is absolutely feast or famine every night for them. And until they fix that, the whole makeup of that lineup, you can go get Correa and Seager all you want. You're still going to get to the wild card and get knocked out because in the playoffs, you don't win series with a long ball. You just don't.
Well,
ask the Red Sox how that worked out.
What are they bringing Boone back for? I mean, to me, that's where you start. You don't start with Correa or Seager or any point. Like you start with Boone.
Well,
I don't understand.
Yeah,
that. I mean,
they fired their entire coaching staff and left Boone there. So now Boone's going to go and pick his whole coaching staff again, and they're going to be right in the same boat that they were to start. Just doesn't make sense to me.
And you've got Cashman, who's architected these teams over and over and over again that haven't worked, still going after the same players. They've got this kind of player they like, and it hasn't worked in a whole lot of years. But they keep following the same model, and it's just not getting them anywhere.
Yeah, I completely agree. And like you said, going back to the strikeouts, Stanton 200 strikeouts, Gallo 200 strikeouts, Judge 150 strikeouts, Sanchez probably close to 200 strikeouts. You got 1,000 strikeouts in those guys. That's 1,000 outs that you're giving the rest of the league. I mean, I know strikeouts are up across the leagues because, another thing we've talked about is it's easier to launch a solo shot off Jacob deGrom than it is to string 5 hits in a row off him.
Sure.
It just is. And that's what, that's why they've gone to the launch angle and all of that analytic stuff is because it is. I mean, it's easier to get one hit that goes 400 feet off a guy than 5 consecutive base hits.
Yep.
It's just how the game's
I know,
changed.
but it has changed, but I think, the Moneyball, they say like baseball's thinking is medieval, like we need to chip, which, do I agree with it, not agree with it? That's probably a different discussion for a different day. But we need to go back to that a little bit more because, yes, is it easier in theory to hit a ball 450 feet and get one run than string 5 hits together? Sure it is. But you're not getting guys on base, working walks, fighting off tough pitches, getting, bloop singles, broken bats, like those kinds of things. Like they frustrate pitchers, but they get pitchers out of their groove. You put extra stress on these guys now having to pitch with guys on base. Not to say a guy like Jacob deGrom's not going to get out of it, because more often than not, he's going to get out of it. But those are extra stress pitches on this guy's arm that you don't have to put there if you don't even put up a fight.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And I think, I get the whole launch angle aspect of it. And like, for the most part, like it, I just don't think you could build a whole team based off of that. Like you can put a few guys in your lineup that are going to do that. You can put in a Stanton or a Joey Gallo. Like you can put those guys in there, but to have
not
a
seven
lineup
of them.
just those guys, it just doesn't work.
Right. No. And if you're the Yankees, you can win 90 to 95 games a year by going 500 against the top teams and crushing all the lesser ones because you're seeing, lesser pitching. But in the playoffs, you're not getting to play those guys. You're playing the top teams who are bringing top pitchers who are dialed in. They're as we said, they manage the bullpen differently. They manage the pitching staff differently. You're not going to get a chance to sit there and lean back and launch 4 balls into the bleachers in a playoff game. And they live and die by that. Just think
of the wild card game. I mean, I know we're going backwards, but that wild card game, Eovaldi looked great. Like Eovaldi looked good. He had that bulldog mentality. Like he brought it. But how many stress pitches did Eovaldi throw? Like how many times did you walk out there and be like, this is a huge inning for Eovaldi to get out of? He never got into any innings he had to get out of.
Yeah.
I mean, they just made it so easy. And
Stanton,
then
Stanton. Stanton, the last two playoffs, Stanton's been on a tear. Let's be honest. But I mean, you're right. Everybody else was a non-factor, so it doesn't matter what Stanton does.
Right.
No.
Right. Well,
you can get by with a lineup who's got one or two of those guys that are high strikeouts, but you can't have your four biggest hitters strike out in a third of their at bats. You just can't do it
In a row.
Right. Exactly.
Like,
four in a
not
row.
not even spaced out in the lineup. They're in a
No.
row.
The middle four hitters of your order are going to swing and miss a third of their at bats and basically create nothing. Not even put any pressure on the defense of the pitcher.
Right.
Brutal.
I agree. Yeah. All right. I think that does it. We're going to head to the wrap up. But just like to thank you guys for watching and tuning in. Please like our Facebook page. You can share it, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and can't wait for the next couple of weeks when you guys can join us live and join our discussion. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next week.